Hello and welcome to Michael Pepper Tech Talk. And this is Thursday night Tech Talk. And while I'm waiting for somebody to join me here, I'm just want to talk about a little bit about an experience that I've had with T-Mobile lately and how great they've been, and um, that had a issue and I called them and they handled it right away and it was done within 15 minutes or less, which is unusual because I haven't had that experience with Verizon or AT&T or Sprint before. And it was just kind of awesome to see that they handled it right away. It was an issue with when we first joined, our accounts were all under my wife's name and we switched them under to my name because I have better credit. And one of the phones inadvertently didn't get switched correctly, and so it acted as though we had to pay on it or owed on it, so it went inactive, and I called them, and they fixed it all up. Also, we have a couple spots in the house that are dead spots, so they're gonna be sending us out a, um, signal booster, one of those that uses your local Wi-Fi, and I know that I could use Wi-Fi calling and things like that, but it's just not the same. Um Wi-Fi calling is great, but that doesn't help with sending texts and things like that. I know RCS is out there, but that only works if other people have it. And so to be able to take advantage of this, and they're sending it out free to me, no $25 fee like normal, just have to send it back to them if if I ever leave them or um, have them update if I move. And if this doesn't work well, they'll just send me a normal repeater. I know that I can get pretty decent as far as coverage outside. I get really good signal with them, especially uploads. So we'll see how this goes. And they said, well, if you don't want this kind and you want one that doesn't rely on internet, so all it needs to be is powered, then to get a hold of them and they will let me know. So that's pretty awesome. As far as tonight's topics on hand, we have flip phones, Chinese phone makers joining together against Google, the T-Mobile and Sprint merger and what's going on with that, and just kind of the future of tech. So um, I'm hoping that this merger goes through. I know that it would be great for current customers and those looking to join in the future. So let's see here. Gonna send out the link. For send out a link real quick. Invite. Copy. Okay, there we go. So I know I haven't been uploading a lot of videos and have been going live and just wanted to kind of talk about that. As far as that goes, been dealing with a lot of personal stuff, and so to go live and just kind of talk about current tech to keep, you guys knowing that I'm good and set to go and just kind of have that discussion is why I've been doing that. But I also uploaded a couple videos recently if you haven't seen those. One is about iCloud and how you can now access it from your iPhone or your Android device. The other is about USB-C and how it's not really universal, and kind of discussion because the EU has ruled that needs to be universal format for that. Hey, how's it going?
Hey man, what's going on, man? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
Okay, cool. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you?
All right, all right. Thanks for having me on, man.
I've been hoping to have people on. It's funny, I actually was thinking about skipping tonight, and I know I haven't been on in a while, and I'm like, oh, I better not do that. And then Tech for Your Needs is like, are you going to be on? It's like, you're streaming tonight, right? And I'm like, sure.
Awesome, awesome,
I
man.
I tried to do a
Am
makeshift
I the?
green screen here, and I'll show you what happens.
Oh boy.
It's a little too glitchy right now, so
Ooh, that's that's weird. I'm going
yeah.
to tweet out.
So I was hoping I'd have better lighting with that. I was just kind of talking about my experience with switching over from AT&T to T-Mobile and how great that's been. And, a lot of people complain about them. And it's like, I've had the exact opposite experience where I've had really horrible with Verizon and AT&T, but T-Mobile has been on it. And if I've had any issues, I get a hold of them and they call me within minutes or they figure it out right away. And it's funny how that works. I guess it depends on where you live too.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, I and I told you before, I had the issue where um Verizon just got to a point where it was very expensive. I like the service. I never had issues with the service or anything. Um, the only thing that I didn't like was how, again, it was so expensive. Um, and for three people, it was like over 300. Now, mind you, we didn't even have anything special. We had to pay gigabytes for internet and everything. It wasn't like we had free calls, free texting, or free data or anything like that. We just had a normal plan, and it was just getting higher and higher each time. And honestly, it was to a point where we just couldn't anymore. So we switched over to Cricket, and that is now um, we have free calls, free text, um, free data. The only thing we don't have is international calling, which is fine. I mean, I have family out of the country, but we have WhatsApp and other apps that we can communicate, so that's fine. But Cricket isn't that bad. Um, I did get a little bit better service with Verizon, especially down here where I am. Um, in my office. But I mean, other than that, I have no complaints. And honestly, to be able to be, um, on social media or whatever, and not having to worry about, oh, I'm almost out of data. It's going to end on this day, and if it ends on this day, um, if I waste all my data, then it's going to waste it all from my parents. And then it's like, you know, they go to work. My mom works nights, so sometimes she's on her phone if she's not that busy, and it's just that kind of thing. So now we don't have to worry about it. So and it's so cheap, thank God.
Well, yeah,
So
it's like I was gonna pull up, but so I did a stream a while back about a friend of mine who went homeless, and I was helping him out. And oh, hold on, I'll continue this story in a second here.
sure.
Hey, Lewis, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me good?
Oh yeah, you sound like perfect.
Yeah, because I'm using my webcam. The only thing that I need to find money is to cover that back. Get it like a room divider because I look ugly that bed. I mean, it's not an ugly bed; it just don't look professional.
Yeah, I tried to. You can see what I did in the back there with a blanket.
Yeah, but I don't have no rods or nothing to put it, so therefore I'm stuck like this till next month. I could
Yeah,
find some more money.
so
I didn't want to use my
Now, how
phone.
much would it be for? Now, how much would it be for like a green screen? Like if you were to buy like
It depends because like you can get really cheap green screens. Like the green screens themselves can be like under $20, but then you're talking about the stand for them, you know. And if you want a good stand, you're probably
Oh yeah.
looking between a good green screen and a couple stands. I'm guessing, from what I've seen, anywhere from like $80 to $100 is the cheapest.
Oh wow, really?
Well, you got to think you have to have good weight because even the a light green screen is going to be pretty heavy, and you don't want that tipping
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. True. True.
And also with the green screen, you got to think and you got to do it right. Because that's why I'm against green screen because people be doing live chat and they be coming in and out. So I don't think it look that professional.
Yeah, that's what I was showing Apple Monster. I tried doing with this green blanket, and the problem is, unless your light's just perfect, you get spots that come in and out, and then you got to have good lighting on you. And my shirt was starting to blend in, even though I'm wearing black, and it just wasn't
Yeah.
good.
The only successful person that I saw is Easy Computer Solution.
Travis does a really good job too.
But Travis don't have a official green screen. He's with a software that he used for. I don't know what he used. I think he
Oh
used
yeah, he
OBS.
probably uses OBS. I've been looking at that. So, oh, that's another thing. I guess we can talk about it's tech related. Is
Oh, before we
might be
continue, can I say something?
yeah.
I just want to say hi to everybody on the chat and welcome. Just want to make sure I don't want to neglect those people too.
Yeah. I don't know. Do we have anyone?
Yes,
Right?
we had one person that made a very inappropriate comment, so I just removed it.
Yeah.
But
Oh
anyways,
jeez.
Did he
yeah.
read this out?
So I just removed it.
Yeah.
So, what I was gonna say is next week or so, if I can get it up and running, um, I might be doing things a little bit differently because I've been looking into using Skype along with OBS. And
Oh
so
cool.
because that would allow 1080p streaming. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and pretty much everybody has Skype, and all you have to do is join in. So you can do that from your phone or your desktop or whatever. And then I can rearrange things, um, put in backgrounds, zooming in on me so I could be cropped in a little bit closer. Things like that are a little bit. And as far as also audio adjustment and things like that. So like if I'm quieter and you guys come in and you're a little louder, I can adjust things. And but
The only thing about
Oh
Skype,
cool.
the only thing that's negative about Skype is just it's a CPU intensive hog. That's the only thing.
yeah, I got my PC. It's covered up right now, but it's powerful enough it will be able to handle it. And I think I have enough bandwidth here that it should be fine.
Yeah, I should be fine because I got a Core i5.
So, and then I don't have to have the StreamYard symbol.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. True.
And like
True.
I said, I can any device. So the only thing I like about this is I can set it up for notification ahead of time.
Mhm.
Where with that, there's not really a good way unless I go in and like create a live stream and then go in and like remove it and jump in with that. So
Now
because
let me
until
ask you. Do you use StreamYard free or are you paying a subscription?
I just use the free version right now, the because I don't know that unless I'm doing this several times a week, then it might be worth it. Like
Yeah.
and I also
Yeah.
heard that if you get in touch with them, they'll make special deals sometimes too.
Oh really?
Yeah, there's been a couple people that have gotten in touch with them and said, "Well, I don't need like all the fancy extra stuff. I just need this one particular, you know, um aspect of it." And they just kind of let them, "Hi, Miles."
What's up, Miles? What's up?
Oh, so you were talking,
Um.
so Apple Monster, you're talking about cricket. So the one thing
Yeah.
that I didn't know that I actually was alerted to is that um they now have True Unlimited. I didn't know that because when I had them,
Yeah.
they were capped to 8 meg.
Oh really?
Back then they had a cap to 8 meg up and 8 meg down. So even if you were in an area that got really good speeds, you were limited and there was no option to pay more to get out of that. Now I know they have that plan for like, was it
Yeah.
45 or something? And you could pay like 55 or 60 a month for the true unlimited.
Yeah, and for like my family, we're paying for 3 people, and it's $90. So it's not that bad. $90, and you get free everything. You know, and on top of that, if you don't mind me saying, if like let's say you wanted a new phone, signing up to them, and Michael, you probably know this, but they actually send you cheap devices. They actually send you um, like different phones. This one is the Moto E Cruise. I don't have it in the box because it's my dad's right now. Um, but if you want it, like let's say you lost yours or you don't have one, signing up, they'll send you a phone for free. And if you were to, um, let's say you were to break it or whatever, if you contact them, you can get it either for free or for a cheap price. So that's another thing that I like about Cricket. Um, my my brother-in-law put it in for a new phone, and he got it for free like the next day. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so getting back to kind of what's been going on though is so we switched to T-Mobile and there's a couple spots where we have dead spots here and they're sending us out and I should have by Monday and actually it might be even here tomorrow a free basically it uses the one I did uses your current network, but it's a booster.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's Wi-Fi calling, but the disadvantage of that is like if you lose signal, you can't send a normal text where you can still use Wi-Fi calling unless you're texting somebody that also has RCS because we have that support now, but so having that will be nice.
But you know what
Yeah,
about
that's
about about networks is just people say that they complain because they say, "Oh, we have the best network in my area." You can't say that because it's subjective. Whatever works in your area works. Not every area is the same. That's why I'm like, okay, that's fine. But it's say if Springbook in your area, that's fine as an example, or T-Mobile, whatever, it's fine. It's whatever works best in your area. That's what I told people. But
mhm.
people be saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You think you're the king of technology." No, at all. It's not. It's just I've been studying, and that's common sense. But if I move to another place and T-Mobile don't work, T-Mobile don't work. I can't use it.
Right. Um,
I had O2 Mobile for a while. It's the uses AT&T
oh well.
and that's what I had for quite some time around here. It was weird because basically Verizon was the only carrier that worked like anywhere around here. And then AT&T came in and then they actually were getting better speeds and stuff and better coverage than Verizon. And now and like T-Mobile basically was non-existent, like any of the Sprint, Boost, Virgin Mobile was basically non-existent. Now it's like T-Mobile has come in and they're kind of a blend between Verizon and AT&T. Like they don't get as good a coverage in certain areas, but they've gotten a lot better around here and I actually get it goes like AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon speed-wise around here, and I'm kind of surprised because it
Wow.
was being in a smaller area. So
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I got a question. Since we talk about network coverage, what happens if we get a disaster? How we gonna communicate if the towers are going down? So that's my I don't see nothing in place of a disaster yet that I heard of or research I can't find. I was looking at it yesterday to see because, for example, a tsunami, earthquake, whatever, natural disaster, how we're gonna communicate, to get help or whatever it is. That's my concern.
well, as far as I know, with the answer to that, so my dad, he retired last February. Well, not this past February, but February of 2018. and he worked for the state of Michigan for the emergency management division of the Michigan State Police, and basically it was like FEMA. And
Hmm.
so in those instances, as far as I know, what they do is a lot of times they put up like temporary towers so that emergency services have access. Like if towers are knocked down, they come in, and they kind of look like, I don't know if you've seen like when the news stations come in and they put up their big satellites to broadcast and stuff
Yep.
on the trucks. They
Mhm.
kind of look like
Yeah.
that because the FCC requires that communication be available for emergency purposes, maintained like within a sort of, there is like a narrow amount of outages that their time that they can be out for before they have to fix that. So as far as I know, that's the type of thing they would do. And I'm kind of looking forward to 5G in a way because of, if that improves, they could literally put this little block that looks about the size of a Rubik's cube on on like a stick basically up out of the top of a car and cover like, was 100 square miles or something like that with something like that. That's the potential of 5G.
Oh wow.
We're
Oh,
not there yet, but that's the potential.
but also 5G is not only for mobile. It's gonna be integrated in different like hospitals, different areas. 5G is more than just a network speed.
Well, that's the other thing too. So if you are within a certain mileage of a hospital, most hospitals have their own like
Infrastructure.
infrastructure. So if you wonder why, if you're in a hospital, you get really good coverage from basically all the carriers, it's because they usually have, well, usually what they have is they have hardwire fiber optic that comes in, and then they have these devices that are repeaters that act like mini towers for that very purpose. So I have
That's
some
interesting.
So I have some topics that I had in mind that I kind of wanted to talk about tonight. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about, and these are things that other people have covered, but I just know we all have our own mindset on them, and it's changing every day. But the first thing I wanted to talk about were the lovely flip phones with the Motorola Razr and the Samsung Z Flip. So what do you guys think?
Do you really want me to rant on this stream right now?
Like, what do you think they're doing right, and what do you think they could do that could fix it that would actually make it worth buying?
I'll go last. I'll let him go. He got a rant.
Um, I'm, so on the on the Motorola side, I think they did an amazing job. I think that that's one of the best flip phones as of now. Um, the only thing that I I can't say I'm worried about, but I can see people's worry about it is the fact that um, like like the Samsung Fold, that the hinge had issues in the beginning with dust and material getting into the to that. I think that the Motorola could potentially have that same issue. But the overall design, I really think they did an amazing job. I mean, to the eye, when it's closed, it looks exactly the same as the one that we had years ago. But that's my only thing that I've been seeing a lot of people talk about is the hinge and how little small material could get in there and maybe harm the phone in some way. I'm not sure. Um, but when it comes to the um, the Samsung flip phone, um, I was never a fan of the first fold that came out. The second fold that came out after they fixed whatever issue that had, I think that looked like a better phone. Is it something that is the future? Is it something that I think somebody who is not a tech creator or a tech fan would get? Would a normal person get it just for whatever reason? I don't think so. And again, I've seen a lot of people say it because it is, when it's closed, it is a big bulky phone, um, and it's just hard to get into a pocket and out of a pocket. Um, do Now, I think it's a cool idea, but I just don't. For me myself, I don't like it. I don't like it. Um, Now with the new phone, this Z Flip or whatever it's called, um, I think that that is a cool phone, and I like the way that they're going back to flip phones. I think that would be a better foldable phone than the other Galaxy phone that we have. So I kind of think that they're stepping in the right direction when it comes to that. Um, will it have issues like the other one? I really hope not. I think that they really need to slow it down and make sure that um, they have everything down pat, and that there's no other issues like we had with the foldable phone. Because honestly, a lot of people, and I know that you guys might have seen this. A lot of people were talking about it on social media, Twitter, Instagram. A lot of people were hyped for it, and then when the whole thing went down, where the people started ripping the screen because they thought it was a screen protector that they didn't need, and all those issues. People were starting to say, well, is this a good phone after all? People started having doubts. And honestly, if Samsung really thinks about it, do they want those kinds of issues again? Do they, because potentially if they did something like that again, God forbid they won't, but if they did, then they're going to start losing customers. People are going to start saying, well, this company sucks because they're just trying to rush their products into for a specific date when they should at least take their time and, if need be, then switch the date and make sure that everything's okay. Because it's harder for the person who is getting the phone to go and buy the phone and then a day later have to go back to the store and say, hey, my phone's screwed up. Can you fix it? And then again, they would have to send all their products back to again resend them. I think it's going to be more work. So I think that Samsung and all these other companies should learn from that and say, hey, we had issues before. Let's make sure that we don't, tease this out too much until we have everything down pat.
Well,
That's my opinion.
Okay.
my take on my add-on, I'm gonna go for two particular areas. I'm gonna go for the physical area, and I'm gonna go for the practicality on the software area, how improve or bring value to the person. So first, I agree with what Martha said because sometimes doing a control environment testing to see how it falls is different than real life. So that phone is not meant for hiking stuff like that. So therefore, you can't take it like that. So stuff like that you can't do because you got to baby the phone because already been mentioned on and people have proven that the phone is fragile. But on the practicality, the phone, yes, on the software part, it brings good stuff. For example, if you're a business person, you go into a meeting and you don't want to carry a big laptop, you can carry two in one and open and take notes and stuff like that. It's the easier form factor. But on the changing the subject to the flip and the Motorola only got looks, but it don't have practicality because it don't bring no value. The flip, it brings a little bit more value because of the screen real estate, but it's not innovating on the software. So What is doing to make me better? That's just my concern on that area. And I don't know if
Hmm.
because it's not all about the physical look. It's also got to work and be practical. You know, if you're paying that much money, you need
Yeah,
something to work. So I don't know what's your take on that.
and that's my point. Like, like I said earlier, instead of a company saying, "Hey, we're gonna have it on this date," and then it come out and like a week later, not even, people notice that it has issues, they should work out the kinks, and then, okay, maybe 3 weeks or whatever, or a month before, you know, say, hey, we're going to release this phone at this point. Yes, I think it's a cool idea for them to say, this phone's coming out, but um, just give a date at a later time. Say, we're going to release it roughly around this time, but not give the exact date of when they're going to release it. Because, you know, they're releasing a huge amount of phones. And to have to work on those, you never know what could happen. I mean, no one anticipated what happened with the Galaxy Fold. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Oh, it's a great phone. It opens up to a tablet. It looks cool on stage and whatever. And then all of a sudden, manufacturing them, things happen. But I just think that they could find ways to go around that. You know what I mean?
So here's my thought on folding phones.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my sentiment on the Galaxy Fold, the Motorola Razr, and the Samsung Z Flip, or whatever they're going to call it. None of them add any benefit beyond what a normal phone does, even the Galaxy Fold, because yes, you can have three apps open at once, but it's one large and two tiny. There's nothing like you can't have two horizontal apps, one all the way across the top and one all the way across the bottom. They're limiting in software what you're allowed to do. And actually the Note is more business functional than the
Correct.
Fold would be, because the Fold didn't even support DeX at first. It does now.
Mm-hmm.
But and then you can't use a stylus with it. You can't even use a third-party stylus because you might put too much pressure and scratch the screen. So
Mm-hmm.
what
Right.
benefit does it add? And then here's the other problem. Samsung still hasn't figured out their software when it comes to a tablet. So trying to use it as a smaller tablet is not really there. And if you think about it, the Note 10 Plus is a 6.8-inch display. This thing is not that much bigger than that. And actually, if you were to measure the area that is taken up when you're watching video with the black bars at the top and the bottom on the Fold,
Oh yeah, that's
it's
true.
probably not any more than if I were to take my Note 10 Plus and hold it sideways in that area that's taken up when you pinch and fill the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
all it is a more expensive device that can break easier and is more expensive to fix and doesn't even have, like, the battery capacity, isn't it? Let's see, was it the battery capacity on my Note 10 Plus, I think, is the same or larger than the Fold, because they're not putting like a 5,000, 6,000 milliamp hour battery. They're only putting like a 4,300 or something like that, 4,280 or whatever it is in there. And
But
so that's my concern, because you're technically, if you think about it, is that has to power both the outside and inside displays fast enough so that you can switch between the two. So even when it's off, there has to be some sort of power that draw, because otherwise when you switch, it wouldn't be as instant. And then there's my other point. So the Mate X, I think, does it right, but how do you protect that? Like, that's, of all of them, you have a normal phone when it's closed, when you open it, and I've seen um Ben from Ben's Gadgets had a video that he did on the retail version, It's 4,000 USD over there right now to get your hands on. It's about 6,000 if you want to get your hands on one through eBay or something over here right now because there's no.
Yeah.
But anyway, he did a video on it and he was showing, and it back and forth between being used as a phone, flipped out to a tablet, and then back to a phone was like instant. But how do you protect it? Because the display is revealed
That's the thing.
the whole entire time. Now, here's what I find exciting. Samsung has claimed, and we'll see if it holds true, that the next model on the Fold and that this Z Flip are going to have a new glass that they're going to use that's actually a foldable, flexible glass that will be more durable than the plastics that are being used. But we'll see how true that holds, and we'll also see what effect that has on other things because glass is going to be thicker no matter what. So
Mm-hmm.
will that mean that
Mm-hmm.
they're like this device is going to have to be a beast and then to fit a battery that's going to be able to power these new chips and things like that? This thing is going to be massive. You're going to be talking about like
Okay, break.
something like these two. Like these two
Yeah.
iPhones put next to each other. You're talking about something like that thick potentially when this thing closes, like an inch, inch and a half thick. And
Yeah.
the real struggle isn't hardware. Not really. I don't think the struggle was entirely hardware. I think the real struggle is software improving that you can handle it well because one of the number one complaints was you put Nova Launcher and you got to make sure you put it on both the external display and the internal. Your keyboard, if you
Mm-hmm.
switch it, it switches back to the default when you go back to the external. So you got to switch every time. There's no like universal, like I use Gboard. It doesn't work well enough to function on the small display on the outside and on the inside. It automatically goes to the split keyboard mode when you go to the inside. There's a lot of things that are concerning, and I get. So here's where I agree with what they did. There is no way that you can beta test inside a company well enough to make this product work
Yeah, like I said earlier.
because you're limiting it to those people that have a different mindset than the customers
In
out in the
certain
real world.
environment.
So
Yeah, and also, when they're testing, it's also in a certain environment, so it's not every environment, so it's confined, like I said earlier. So I like to be a
Mm-hmm.
real world test, but you can't test it because then people might be like, oh, leaks and rumors. You know what I mean? So it's a give and take. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of feel like what they should have done, instead of doing an event and talking about it, they should have just released it. Just release it. Just put it out there because, yeah, everybody already knew about it ahead of time. Also, what that does is it doesn't
Right.
put as much pressure on it if it fails. Just put it out there and be like, "Hey, this is a concept. This is something there might be, just put it out there because for Samsung, it's not going
That's
to
true
hurt
too.
them.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt them as much as if they try to come out and be like, "This is awesome," and then it fails. If they say, "Hey, this is a product we're working on," and they send it out to people, and they let people buy it if they want to buy it, it's good. And they kind of did that,
Right.
but then they also kind of made people wait, and people don't like to wait. Just put it out there when it's ready.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, certain things that you see, um, teasers of, and it's like, oh my god, it looks like a great device, and then, oh, but it's only going to come out like 6 months from now. Okay, well, you're giving us 6 months to wait on this, and it's like we're waiting for something good, better to come out than what we have, and you're teasing all these things. Like, at least give us a shorter amount of time to wait, because a lot of people are just like, well, I want to get a new phone. Like me, like I had the iPhone 10, and then I started hearing all the leaks and rumors about the iPhone 11, and the cameras and all this other stuff that iPhone 11 has, and it's like, geez, I have to wait this long. I've already had the iPhone 10 for like two and a half years, and now I have to wait 6 more months for the iPhone 11 to come out. You know,
Yeah. Well,
it's
that's one of the things that when these companies start doing biannual releases like OnePlus did. So then the question is, do you get a device that just came out 3 months ago, or do you wait 3 months for the next one? And then when the next one comes
mhm,
out, it's like, do you get that one, or do you wait another 6 months if you don't like that one? I guess that is a benefit in a way because it's like it comes out and you don't like it, another one's going to come out in 6 months instead of a year. But at the same time, that keeps them from selling well because you have a product that people are just keep wondering if the next one is going to beat out the last one, and they're only going to have to wait anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And
yeah,
and it degrades value of what they just launched potentially.
right, right,
I mean, my OnePlus 6T, I paid $800 for it. By the time I sold it, I was able to sell it for about $400. Well, actually, I got 450 for it. I was pretty lucky that somebody had a 16 and they really, really wanted to replace it, and theirs had broken. So I was able to get a good amount for it, but it was only 4 months old at the time.
yeah,
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
also
half the
it
price.
depends.
That's bad.
Yeah, but it depends on the brand recognition because if
So
you sell an iPhone versus a OnePlus, you're gonna get more with the iPhone. So it
that's
depends.
true. That's true. Even Samsung was giving people $600 for their iPhone 10 for the 64 gig. 60% of the value 2 years later was pretty. That's pretty good.
yeah,
But
yeah.
and so let's see here. My next subject. I don't know if you guys heard about this at all or not, but is Chinese phone makers versus Google, as in. So one of the things that was brought up, actually, I saw this today, was that companies like Huawei and Xiaomi and some of the
Okay,
other companies, Oppo and some of the different ones, are working on creating their own, basically like a cumulative of theirs to go up against the Play Store and to not
Oh,
have to, because they have their developers, and to create their own
so the
kind of
ecosystem.
competition. So,
But you know who's doing that real good by himself? It's Amazon because Amazon tablet they got their own Google store, so they've already been ahead of the game. So they got their own Android fork. You know, it's a fork of Android, so therefore them doing it good. So I guess the other companies want to follow that.
well,
Because
and then also, so I have the Honor 8X um that I won in the giveaway that Jay Williams did,
ooh, that's a
and I can't get Google Play Services to work on it, but I got Aptoid, which has basically all the apps that are available in the App Store, including like the beta versions. So I wonder if that's what most people are doing, is they're either sideloading Google, or they're using something like Aptoid or a third party. I know in China, Huawei has their own, and it's huge and it works really well, and they have their own apps, and that's what people use. And I think Google forgets about that. And Apple doesn't have to worry about it
mhm.
because they're everywhere and it's the same,
Oh yeah.
you know. I mean, there's certain apps that aren't available, like you'll click on an app and it says not available for US. I've had that happen before.
Oh really?
Yeah, because it will be some app that somebody's talking about, but it's only available in another country because it only got approved for the App Store, like in Germany or China or someplace like that, and not available in the US App Store yet. But um, so I just think it's interesting that they're talking about doing that, but it's good for them because that leads to competition. Because
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
um, I don't know if you guys saw, but the number of apps that were downloaded and sold and things like that were really close between. Actually, there were more on the Play Store than there were on the Apple's App Store, but the developers made almost twice as much from iOS
Oh
as they
wow.
did because a lot of apps are free. Like they
Mm,
release the apps for free on the Google Play Store, but they're paid on iOS, and I think it's because they know people will pay for them.
yeah.
Okay, but you know what? To that, if you put the same app, say Instagram is way better on iPhone. Okay, or vice versa, or like Facebook or that, because Apple make more quality. Apple force people to do more quality. Like on Android, I heard people putting stupid apps. You know what I mean?
That's
Like a
true.
blur,
They
like and stuff like that, getting away with it. So it got you got to think about the quality versus, that's Google's fault because Google don't regulate. That's the problem that I got with Google. It's regulation.
well the
Google was more strict. They wouldn't have this fragmentation with apps and everything.
well the Google Play Store does a lot of automated approval where Apple does. They do that for apps that have been out for a long time for minor update stuff. But if that catches something, then it has to be approved by humans. Like if it picks up on something that says, "Oh, you've added something," then it gets kicked over, and that's why it takes a little bit longer. But I agree. Like for instance, I don't know if either of you know this, but um, Twitter on the iPhone. If I want to switch profiles, if I can get this, I can just press and hold down here and up pops my other profile and I can select and switch to it.
Oh.
Grab my
Oh
Android
wow.
device
Hmm.
and you have to let me go into this real quick. I should already be in nope, I wasn't in Twitter yet. But
Hmm.
um on Android I have to go up here and then select my icon to switch. It's a lot long it takes. And so if I'm switching back and forth between profiles, that takes a while. And sometimes I do that. I'll switch back and forth like I'm posting something on my normal tech profile, but then I want to post my photos also over on my Michael Pepper photography profile to be able to just press and hold like that and then just switch and then switch back is handy instead of having to reach up towards the top of the device. And there's a lot of instances like that. Even like like Instagram and their dark mode is different.
Yeah.
Um, some forms of dark mode on Android are more gray instead of an actual black and things like that. Um, Also on that note, differences too, and this is going to make things really interesting. So today, it officially was made so that app developers can release an app and have it be universal to iOS and the Mac App Store. So you could
Especially,
develop an app, a paid app,
I
yeah,
heard.
and like let's say I make some paid app and I charge $2.99 for it. You pay for that, I could have it available. So you pay $1 more and you get it across
across the board.
iPhone, iOS, you get the iPad app and you get the Mac app. Or if you just want the Mac app, I could have it be $2.99 and $2.99 for the iOS one. So that way it's cheaper to buy both together. You can do things like that. But there isn't another like you can't do that with Android. Like you can't go
Yeah. No. Yeah.
integrate a way to like get a Windows version of Skype, like a paid version of Skype on Windows and also then have it available on Android. The only way they can do that is a sign in. Like you log in to get access to the paid stuff,
Right. Yeah.
which is what a lot of them do. That's like I have apps that do that. That's how I get paid stuff.
Hmm.
There are some apps that do that, so that way I get the paid premium version on iPhone, Android, whatever whatever format you're using it on. Um, like Spotify, for example, they're premium. You're signing in to get access to that stuff. It's not a different app, but
True. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why you get paid more on iPhone because it's less to hack the app. For example, Android APK, you got the app for free. So therefore, Apple's more strict. That's why it comes down to regulations and rules implementation.
Well, and it's easier to monitor the money because it's all through one, and you know that you're not going to have somebody try to come in and pay through PayPal and then dispute it and like get apps for free or ripping off developers and stuff because that's happened before.
True.
Yeah.
So then there's this. So you guys know much about what's going on with that, with the T-Mobile
No.
and Sprint merger?
Oh well, I got to
No.
capture a mobile sneeze. He's the one that talked about it a lot.
Yeah, he did a kind of an update on it today too, but so as far as I know, it's still on delay, but the FCC isn't fighting it as much as they have been, which is good. But there's still some questions as to like um Dish, yeah, yeah, Dish taking over for um the Boost Virgin Mobile and like the MVNOs
And
for Sprint and T-Mobile, the smaller, that they'll take that over and basically become the fourth carrier. But
Okay, that's interesting.
I think they should just go ahead and do it because Sprint is starting to have more and more issues,
yeah,
and it's more of an acquisition thing. That's what Sneed said, SMT said on his thing too, was it's more of an acquisition. It's more of T-Mobile getting access to the bandwidths and to the bands that Sprint has. And
Mm,
it'll it'll be really helpful for those people on Sprint too, because then in turn they should also, as long as they have a supported device, get access to the T-Mobile bands without roaming. And so here's the thing. Some people go, well, don't they already get that if they roam? Yes, but roaming is different because you're not prioritized.
yeah, exactly.
And you're not um it's harder to monitor too. And
Mm,
and I also know that some companies, if you run out of your main amount of data, like for example, um, you run out of 22 gigs or whatever it is that your cap is before you're throttled. Like
okay.
some carriers, ours is 50 a line on T-Mobile,
Okay.
but um, a lot of them are 22 or 23 gigs or whatever per line, and then they can throttle you. Well, also what happens is you no longer roam on other networks as soon as you hit that on most carriers. And that's what people don't know, like that if you're on Cricket and you have like let's say you have 10 gigs of data and then or not on Cricket because they don't do that. But let's say you're on AT&T and you have like we were on the 9 gig plan and then it slows down. Once it slows down, you no longer get access roaming either. So not only are you throttled on speeds, but a lot of times you don't roam onto other networks because they don't have an agreement on 3G and slower with as many towers and things like that because they purchase certain packet amounts for high speed data.
mm.
So, and I know that 3G technology varies across carriers too. So that might change, but as far last I knew, like um, when I was testing things, if I turned off 4G LTE and went into an area that dropped AT&T signal, it was just gone. It wasn't roaming, it wasn't doing anything. And I turned 4G on, then it would roam. So, um, but most people don't know that Sprint is actually one of the largest when it comes to the bandwidth that they own. they own more bandwidth than most than I think both AT&T and Verizon actually have. It's just they don't have the money to implement it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I heard something about that.
But you know what happened? Because they did business wrong. If they would have done everything right and advertised like you're supposed to, they wouldn't have a deficit. And then they got they got the stuff, but they don't have the money for the infrastructure to grow it more and make it better. That's why they're in that position of almost dying.
Well, Sprint bought. I know they bought some frequencies not too long ago too, but then they didn't use them, and so it was like, okay, great, you just spent $27 billion, but you got no value out of them.
Correct. Because it's not about buying it, and then you got to pay more money to implement it. So therefore, they don't have the money to implement it. They don't got enough. So that's why they're bleeding.
I don't know if you guys know this or not, and it wasn't really openly talked about, but I kind of discovered this right away, but that the were some key differences between when it came for the iPhone 11 versus the 11 Pro and the Pro Max. Um, One being the multiple in, multiple out is 2x2 on the 11, and the Pros are 4x4. But the other huge difference was the Pro models both had the um, private bands, which were bands that were opened up when some of the TV stations sold off frequencies, and that is not in the on the regular iPhone 11. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I think it's called, was it CSMR or something like that? Band, was it 48? I think it was. And basically, it's a band that's open across all carriers, but they refer to it as a private band. And the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max are the only devices that actually currently have that.
Is it because of eSIM? I don't know. I'm just learning.
No, it's because I think Apple knew that this was going to happen between device launches, so they wanted to implement it while they could, so that way, because they support devices 4 or 5 years down the road, they wanted to implement it. And the reason that they didn't put 5G in yet was because 5G is changing technologies between.
Oh, okay.
Like that's my theory about
Yeah,
that.
because what I'm
Yeah.
learning from a small needs, they're different 5Gs. Like the middle ways, and I get confused. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, you have. I mean, there's 600 millimeter. There's sub 600. There's which is millimeter wave and things like that. And so if they implemented the type of 5G that was out last year, and then it changes those devices, unless they have both technologies implemented, you paid extra for nothing. It's like if you bought a S10 5G or a Note 10 Plus or a Note 10 5G or a OnePlus 7T Pro McLaren 5G edition or whatever, if those don't have multiple versions of 5G, and the kind that they do have is not implemented in the future, you basically just paid all that money for nothing. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Hmm.
comparing companies, because we're talking about Apple and Android, I see more. This is my personal. I've been since using Android since day one, since G1 came out. So when the iPhone 7 came, I got the iPhone 7. Then I went to the 8 Plus. Then I went to the 10R, and I'm happy with the Apple ecosystem because it's not because it all work and all that. It's one thing that I like. Android, you only have the phone for a certain amount of time before it gets slow or before you got to buy another one because it's outdated because it's not working properly. So in Apple, you got one thing. You could buy once and you got longevity and the product lasts long. That's what I'm trying to integrate more Apple products in my life because I'm a type of person. I need stuff to work and give me money. I don't need stuff to be like 1 year I gotta pay again, another year I gotta pay. So I'm not about that. I'm about efficient longevity and give me money. Invest short and not invest every year because it's not gonna be beneficial for my pocket.
That's true. It's so I had um a Note 8. Actually, my first Samsung device was an S3, and then I didn't have any Samsung devices until the Note 8 came out, and I had that on Verizon, and that just was a bummer. Then we switched to AT&T, and I had my iPhone 10, and then when the Note 9 came out, I got that, and that was okay until One UI came out, and that kind of deadened the battery life and slowed it down. Then the Note 10 Plus came out, so I got that. And then the OnePlus 6T was out, and I had that for a short amount of time, and then they just kind of stopped updating it. They promised updates months after month, and then they stopped it.
But you know what's my take on that? Because okay, Apple trying to keep you as a customer to stay there forever. Android is like, oh well, the new phone is coming, so let me sell that phone on purpose. This is my analogy. I could be wrong. My thinking behind, oh, let me do this on purpose, so you have to buy the next one.
Well, I know Apple got in trouble doing that, where they would slow things down so that it didn't hurt battery life as the
Yeah,
battery
but
degraded. But
yeah,
here's what I was
that's
gonna
the
say.
reason. That's
Hey
just
man,
the reason.
You
I'm
gotta go.
sorry I have to interrupt, but I gotta run. My dad's calling me.
Okay, have a good
So
one.
you too, man. Thanks for inviting me on. I'll be in contact with you. Hopefully, we can set something
Oh
else
yeah.
up
Um.
for either your channel or my channel.
Okay. Have a good
Well,
night.
All right, man. Hey, talk to you guys later.
Peace.
later. Peace out. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
any so anyways, what I was gonna say though is my Note 10 Plus and my OnePlus 7T. Well, I just got the 7T like a month ago. Actually, no, a couple weeks ago. But
Yeah.
my Note 10 Plus is the first Samsung device I've had from basically when it came out. Well, yeah, literally shortly after it came out to like what has it been 5, almost 6 months later,
Hmm.
and it's actually been running like smooth the whole time. And actually, the update, the One UI 2.0 update, it's even faster than it was when I got it, which surprised me. Like I was concerned that when that update came out, it was going to crash it. And battery life has been basically the same. But with that said,
Hmm.
nowhere near like my Note 9 when I had that when that was on Android 8 and it was before One UI came out, I got like 10 to 12 hours of screen on time. Now I get, if I'm lucky, I get 10 on a good day. Most days I get like 7 or 8. And what's concerning about that is larger battery, like 10% larger battery and more efficient
Yeah.
processor.
Yeah. Just give me a second.
Okay.
I gotta call.
Okay. So, yeah, that's a problem when it comes to devices is in the past I just didn't have a good experience when it came to um Android and using a device and having it maintain and be smooth and fast enough long enough. And my iPhones, I never had that issue. And even my iPhone 10, um, I would get 7 or 8 hours of screen on time with that battery being 2,700 milliamp hours. And my 11 Pro Max has a larger display, newer, faster processor, 3,969 milliamp hour battery, but I get ridiculously good screen on time. You're talking 16 to 18 hours, and that just doesn't seem real. So, um it's just crazy to me that that's the case. So, I just don't know, what's been going on with that, but um I'm just happy that I finally have devices that I'll be able to hold on to for years. Hey, check the tech. What's up? I'm sorry, I just with StreamYard going back and forth in the
Okay, there
I,
you go.
I wondered. I just saw it. Anyways, with StreamYard with the delay, it's a bummer because then I try to switch over to the um tab I have here with YouTube, but then that throws things off sometimes too. So, um, but yeah, what's been exciting to me is to finally have devices because I like using Android because of the customization and finally have ones that have the things that the reason I kept using an iPhone and will keep using it was, battery life and good cameras and things like that. And to find and a device that I know that will, even if they stopped, even if I didn't get any upgrades, will run smooth. Like even if I was stuck on this version of Android on both those devices, I could use them for the next 4 or 5 years and probably have no issues as long as the apps, are still supporting that version.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that is true. But I mean, looking at all companies and everything, like since we're talking about actually different companies, BlackBerry, you heard the news that died. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
oh yeah, yeah, I was actually going to in this subject right here. The future of smartphones was going to talk about we already kind of discussed, foldables and things like that, but it was more along the lines of BlackBerry kind of going away and TCL coming in on their own and some companies that are doing their own thing now because TCL, they were the company that manufactured, well, they do Alcatel, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And BlackBerry, and now that's kind of gone. So I wonder, though, are they really gone? Or is another company going to come in and take over that contract for them? Because it was mainly TCL saying, we're not, they kind of came out and said, we're no longer in contract with building these phones, manufacturing these devices as the um, ODM for BlackBerry. So I wonder if another company is going to come on and take over for
Well,
that.
this is my take. I don't think BlackBerry should continue because they're bleeding with money. They're not really what they're at. So I don't see the purpose of they staying there. You know what I mean? Like if I was just jump and grab BlackBerry, BlackBerry's already, not everybody care for BlackBerry to buy it. So what's the point of another investor investing money on something that is bleeding? You know what I mean? It's not a return investment. So
Um, yeah, I have heard speculation and or
people,
somebody brought up this point, and I thought it was a good point. Was that what if Google were to like buy the patents for some of the technology they have because they they had basically their version of like iMessage, but an Android kind of based version of it with BlackBerry Messenger a long time ago. And even when it comes to security, the chip that they have, um, what was it called? Starts with a T. I'm trying to remember what the chip. Anyways, they had for security. They've had that a long time ago. They had that before Apple started putting the security chip or the security sector on their A chips. They had that before like Samsung was doing Knox and things like that. And I can't think of what it was called. Oh, that's a good question.
oh yeah, that's true. Sorry, I was just reading that chat. I was agreeing with
Mm,
check the text. The BBM was like an iMessage, but the thing is that they didn't keep up with the time, so they didn't adapt, so they got left behind. When they did BlackBerry 10, they did BlackBerry 10 on actually on special software, like for the touchscreen. I liked it that a lot. My friend had that phone, but the thing is just not enough people was invested on that particular software, so their operating system. So therefore, I mean, they die. You know what I mean? It's like you gotta keep regular or either you're in or you're out. You know what I mean? If you don't
well,
keep up,
Yeah, it's like LG, and then they announced that they're not coming to MWC this year, but that's because of the health stuff,
Yeah.
and they don't want their employees to get sick, and I can get that. But I'm actually kind of excited because watched an interview of LG's CEO, and he was talking about some of the changes that they're doing. And I see it coming into play like with the LG G8 and stuff, but they just need to do more PR because they make good products. Like they had the audio quality from that DAC, from their headphone jack, the displays that they use, the processors that they use, the software is finally about as smooth as like pure Android or even like Oxygen OS on OnePlus. It's
Mhm.
up there. They've removed a lot of the junk, and it'll be interesting to think, um, you know, to see where it goes this year. So check the text says, when will Android lock down a similar messaging system? Okay, so RCS, I think, is the beginning of that, but here's the issue. Here's the issue that Android has, and they will always have, in my opinion, or based on what I've seen. And there's no unified version, like no unified backbone across all manufacturers that makes it easy to implement something without downloading a messenger, unless every company agrees to build that in. Like Samsung builds RCS into their messenger. My OnePlus actually has that RCS chat function built into their messenger. So, and then Google. So that's the first step. And it doesn't matter what carrier you're on. But here's the problem, unless somebody goes in and turns it on, because by default, that chat function is turned off. And here's where it's also an issue. Unless Google comes out and puts out an app and Apple approves it as an app, kind of like how they approve Facebook Messenger for iPhone, then I could see it working. Like if Google came out with a Google Message app that you could download on your iPhone, so you could message with all the people, basically what they've wanted Apple to do with iMessage for a long time, where um, they wanted an Android app to be able to be downloaded, and then you could chat with all the people that have iMessage on their iPhone just by downloading an app. But here's the other issue. It's not, if it's not natively built in, then you can't use, although Apple's changed that now where you can use like your voice to type out text like in Facebook Messenger and stuff, but you can't set it as a default, so there's no way to be able to be, like to trigger your voice assistant to get it to send a message no matter which version you're on through that, because on Apple's side they won't let you use like a third party message without going into it and manually typing it out or using your voice to convert. Like you can't just vocally respond to a message that comes in yet. Although I think they added that with iOS 13 that if a Facebook message came in, you could respond to it similarly.
Yeah, Mike has
And
done that.
since iMessage isn't available on Android, um, if it was, then Android manufacturers, because they let you choose the default app, you'd be set to go. So there will never be a cross platform, but there already is in a way. Because um, if you're going to have to concede to the minor things that don't occur because it's not natively built in, you're just going to use Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Viber or one of those where you can download it and just have other people use it, or you're just going to use normal text messaging. But here's the thing that was pointed out. Check the Tech pointed this out too. There's no end-to-end encryption on RCS yet. There's no version that is just simple to use, even though It's built in on basically all the major Android devices now. It doesn't support the end-to-end encryption. It's limited on file size. Like you can allow, I think, up to 128 with 128 meg photos at once, and um, so many gigs in video or whatever. So it's limited in what you can do. Where iMessage, you could send basically as high resolution and as long a video as you want. It's just going to take the time to upload and send. But Apple uses iCloud for that a lot of times. It sends in a link, so you're not even having to upload the whole thing. It sends in a link, and then the person clicks on it, and then they download it from there. And Google does the same thing with Google Photos. But that requires downloads at either end. So if you send a link and it uses Google Photos, it's either going to go to the web app or you have to install Google Photos. iMessage just works because it's native. And
Yeah, but
until there's some sort of force that says, like, the government says you have to have a unified, which they already do through SMS, unless they say that it must reach a certain amount of requirements. Like, it must support SMS, MMS, end-to-end encryption, and all this stuff, and be unified across all of them. It won't happen, and I don't think they're going to do that.
all right, this is my take. I mean, I'm gonna take it back. I'm gonna go back to history and break it down. When first Android started, Android needed to have. I'm gonna go back to regulations and rules because that's the key of this narration conversation of Android. Android didn't emphasize and force people like Apple to use this, and that, and that's why they're in the predicament. And the key big word is called fragmentation. That's why they are fragmented due to the fact that they didn't force nobody. So, they had something going on with Google Hangouts, and then you could text, and that was the best thing they come close to. But they do have, and then be like, bye. I don't want to use that. Like I don't get it. Why Google work with software and then they let it die? They don't continue, putting effort. Or if they would have forced everybody to use messaging apps since day one, and then okay, you could put overlays. Everybody could have their own overlay. Just have the phone function messaging, those two, the main ones, have unified, and the rest could be overlays or whatever, like Sense, like UI 2.0, stuff like that, LG, user interface. That would have been fine. But see, that's the downfall. What happened? They let everybody be like, oh, you can do whatever you want. Open source, yeah, open source to a certain extent. But if you had rules and regulation, then would have been more unified in today's world. But it's not because of they fall.
So basically, what kind of popped into my mind is the simple, kind of layman's term form of what you were saying is Android is so open that things that need to be unified are almost made impossible now.
Correct.
Yeah. Which I agree. And it's good that it's open, though, in a way, because that does allow. Because imagine how many things are on iOS that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't some sort of. If Android was competing, but it was closed like iOS was. Imagine, like, for example, um, dark mode across all the apps. Um, what else? Just certain things that Apple implemented that Android was working on that um if these companies weren't open to the point where they could basically do what they wanted because they're not restricted to one, and like Samsung could test, like, because they can do things because it doesn't have to work on a Google device or an LG device. A company can basically test those functions, and then Apple, saw some of the things, or the other companies saw it and was like, oh, it worked for them, now we'll implement it. We're too scared to gamble, but Samsung is huge and they did, so we're going to implement it. OnePlus did that. OnePlus had dark mode before Well, actually, I think Huawei had dark mode a while
Right.
back too, but OnePlus
No,
had it as a as one of the companies that we know in the US. They had it before Android 10, and they had it before iOS added it in iOS 13. Um, but if it was literally iOS and one other operating system, and the other operating system was locked down too, I don't think we would have seen those experiments that led to some pretty successful things.
no,
Like, for example, Google, they were able to experiment with the camera software. Um, and what if they didn't do that? You know, what if they were locked in, then they wouldn't have been able to do the AI and things like that they did to experiment with. Sam's also, as far as that goes, then every manufacturer would have to have the same hardware because if the software is all locked in, then the software limits what hardware can be used because unless it's so open to every possibility, which is not going to happen because they're not going to. Why would you, for example, why would you have the operating system support crazy levels of zoom and telephoto, ultra wide and wide angle, and macro lens um, in the version of Android that Google uses if they don't have half of those things?
yeah, that's true.
And
No, I mean,
then, if they only had one version, then Samsung couldn't implement things. OnePlus couldn't have had the macro lens and the ultra wide and the telephoto and the wide if they were limited to Google saying, well, we're just doing the one lens and then this past year the two, and they restrict it. So it being open allows them to go in a path in a different direction.
no, I agree, but I'm just when I meant I'm half open. I don't. I mean for certain apps that are meant like main apps. That's what I meant. Like for example, just the dialer and the actual texting. Only those two apps to be unified across, and then the rest it could have been whatever you want. You know what I mean? Because there's certain things that you need to be mandated. I think it's the proper term. You know, like reinforced. Not
Yeah,
every. I'm talking about like like 5% because this app. You know what I mean? That's why there's so much problem because if you send a file on Android, it doesn't look right. But if you send an iMessage, it looks better.
that's true.
Just just minor apps, not the whole thing. Just like 0.5%, just only on two apps. Those two, because those two are the main ones. The rest could have been whatever. You know what I mean?
So as far as that though, then you question like at what point, um, like, so if you lock in the dialer and messages so that it has to be
You know,
one, which company gets to choose? Like, does Google say you're using Android, so you use our version of it? And then, if that's the case, they have to use their version of Contacts because Contacts is built into the dialer and connects to it.
correct.
And then also Calendar and email and Maps because those all communicate. So, but they all do anyways. All the companies but usually use Google's
Base code.
stuff for a lot of, although they all have their own email and they all have their own photo gallery and stuff. So I do agree. I do think that, and it could happen. The companies could all say, um, these are the things we want and these are the things we agree on, and we'll use, and then Google pushes it out, and then Google gets credit for it. And um, whenever there's an update, it's just pushed through the Play Store and it updates for all of those. It updates on Samsung, LG, OnePlus, um, Oppo, whatever, all the companies that are using there. It's just done. And that's the other thing. So if you're using a Pixel, not only do you get the software updates right away, but every device that supports that
Yeah.
basically, since they all use Google Apps, and any Android One device that uses that, and like OnePlus, a lot of the apps they have their own versions, but they also use a lot of Google's. Um, Whenever there's an update, then all of the devices get that update. Or if you
Yeah.
have a Samsung phone, you got to wait for Samsung to push the update to your email client, which a lot of times happens with a full-on software update. It's not just, although they do have that, they have their own the Google Gallery and stuff where they have their own um,
In that regards, in that regards, Google has become better because remember back in the days, let's go way back to the beginning. You had to wait for the whole software to be updated. Now in the future, they're doing apps, individually. Some companies put their apps on the actual Play Store to be updated, so that changed that rules. So they have gone better. That's why it's the narration is getting better, but it's too late to reinforce rules on certain apps that are mandated because the system's so broken that the fragmentation, people are not going to listen because whatever, you know what I mean? Because look, the perfect example, you could take any app and put it on the Play Store, and you know who do it better sometimes and fix it better? XDA developer, and then it'll work for Google. That's the only thing bad about open source. People could implement more stuff and get away with it. So that's just my take on the subject because based on that.
well, one thing
Go ahead. Yeah,
that um, that was put in the chat here by
yeah,
Check the Tech was talking about if Google mandated that it would make things better, and if Android stopped being free and charged licensing for it, maybe they would be able to have a unified version. And then he also said um, Microsoft has more control over Windows experience by charging for it, and it's true because they charge, so
mhm.
but then I think everybody expects a better experience because they charge for it. I think that's part of that too. Like they expect everything to be polished and unified because they're paying for it. But so here's what's interesting is
Mhm.
so iOS started with everything really locked down, and then they're starting to allow more things to be open. For example, AirPlay. It works on LG, Vizio, Samsung, and other TV companies now are implementing that. They're also building in the Apple TV Plus app and some things like that on other companies. Um,
But
you can access iCloud on across Android, iPhones, Microsoft, all those things, right? So they kind of started lockdown and they're opening things up a little bit more. AirPods work apart from software updates. They work on any device that can connect via Bluetooth, and that even includes if you enabled it, if you connected it with an iPhone or an iPad and set up the tap functions, when you connect it to an Android device, it'll work. So you could connect it to a buddy's device for the software updates and then use it on your Android device. Things like that. Android kind of started in the opposite. They started opened up and now they're starting to lock down some things. Like for example, Google now requires Android 10. They're going to start that is going to be the minimum for all new apps. They
mhm.
have to support at least Android 10, and updates are now pushed through the App Store. So instead of you going and getting your Samsung updates for certain things through Samsung, they can just push it out, and any device that runs Android 10 will be able to get that those security updates and even major updates. So you don't have to wait anymore because they're putting in that enforcement, that requirement. And that was supposed to happen with Android 9 Pie.
True.
And I can't remember what it's called though. Um, if if anybody can remember, it was and they had a word for it, that Google had a word for it that they implemented, and it had to do with the format for the updates, and it was similar to
Yeah, I forgot.
what Apple calls Delta updates,
Yeah.
but it had to do with um, the version of Android itself and the technology. But anyways,
Mhm.
so they're starting to do that too.
But you know what? Let me counter your point about start with Apple. Apple's opening thing because they was forced to because of let's go back at the whole history and talk about sales. Sales not doing that great since we know on the actual devices of the phones. So they started licensing some stuff and putting out like visual stuff like that, like the Apple TV and stuff like that and AirPlay. Due to the fact, the more you, it's like Google. The more you people have it, the more customer you get. You know
That's
what I mean?
true.
And
And
that's a strategy. It's got to go with strategy marketing. So since Apple's like, oh, we're not making the same thing because sooner or later the phone market is going to slow down because it's going to plateau until we go to the next big thing like foldables and wearables. I think that's the next thing in my opinion. So Apple's looking at it at the long term. Okay, we need to attract more customers, so we need to do this, this, and this, and we have to give a little bit our service just to catch people. The service that are they're not going to hinder our security part of it.
well, it's like Apple Music being available on Android,
Hmm.
and you can access Apple Music, um, um, you know, not just on a Mac or iOS device anymore. And it's true. I don't know that they were forced to necessarily. I think I think what we're starting to see is the new heads, the new CEOs and things like that, their ideas, because I think we were still seeing some of Steve Jobs and stuff in there. And I
True.
think and Johnny Ives even, and I think we're starting to see the new finally kind of come in. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because that could be dangerous depending on because I think if Steve Jobs was alive, the we wouldn't have seen the
One
10R, the 10S, the 10S Max, the 11, 11 Pro, and the Pro Max. I think we would have seen one iPhone still.
and yeah, and going back because all that we talk is tying to the future of smartphones because that's all related. So it's true. It depends on the person, but I see Apple going in the right direction for me now because they're willing to have more, a little more. Like the 10R was a perfect example. It didn't work with the iPhone 5C, but they did something that it kind of disrupted the market. You could have something great for cheaper, like OnePlus did that. A perfect example. You know what I mean?
Well, the 5C didn't work because they came out and made something actually cheap, like
Correct.
plastic cheap. The 10R is still a quality product when it comes to hardware. Even the screen is like the best LCD screen,
Hmm.
even with the lower resolution. I mean, it's bright. It's brighter than the fact that it gets up brighter than the Pixel 4 and 4 XL tells you something. And it's an LCD and those run OLED. And it's beautiful. Yeah, they didn't use the same they used aluminum for the frame or whatever. They didn't use the stainless steel like they did on the Pro models and stuff, but it's still and the internals are the same.
Hmm.
It's still amazing but I don't think that that ever would have happened with Steve Jobs around. I think he would have let the company crash before he would have let that happen. Same thing with, I don't think the Apple Pencil would have come out on the iPad either.
Hmm.
At least not the way that it did originally. The second generation I could see with the wireless charging, but I don't think he would have ever said, sure, make it so you can plug that ugly thing into the end of an iPad and let it stick off like this weird third arm or whatever.
Yeah, and talking about smartphone futures because that's the subject, and also company. I'm moving the company. That's one thing that I think is the best thing Apple did.
So I, we, Oh, the it'll be interesting to see. So, um, I don't know. You saw my video talking about USB-C. So
Yep.
that was one other thing that I was going to talk about with future smartphones. So I don't see that companies will be forced to necessarily use that because unless they all agree on like a unified charging speed, it's still going to be limited. Like for example, I can't use my OnePlus charger with my Samsung and the other way around. I can, it will charge at normal speed, but you don't get the optimal because they all use um different forms. It's like Qi charging. The reason that's great as wireless, and actually, if every company, and actually think I see this happening first, if every company used the really fast wireless charging that like Huawei uses, it's just a form of Qi charging. So any device that supports it, you can use the same charging pad. With USB-C, the problem is there are different number of pins. For example, OnePlus actually uses a 5 pin and other companies use a 4 pin. There is a different what do they call it?
There's no standard.
Um interference and that with the thickness and the density of the cable, it actually affects the decibel level interference across the cable. And because for example, um even though my OnePlus charging block is 30 watts and my Note 10 is 25 watts, if I plug the cable from my Note into my OnePlus, it doesn't work. And the other way around, you have to use the right cable with the right block. But then there's also not even with that, but then also Samsung uses USB-C to USB-C, where OnePlus uses USB-A to USB-C and is
Oh,
actually able to get faster charging. So there's even that. Just because the phone side is the same, the power blocks vary and so much, and the cables. And it's and then the other thing is not all of them support Thunderbolt through USB-C. That's why not all phones can use a USB-C to HDMI cable
mm-hmm.
without being powered, and not all of them can use it at all. Some like Google, unless you have the Pixel 4 or Pixel 3 series, like the 3A series doesn't support video out through the USB, through USB-C. So they limited things for charging, like charging data and video varies on that, even though it looks the same, it's not. So it's not really any different than I would still have to carry two cables and two charging blocks, whether I have an iPhone needing Lightning and an Android device, or an iPhone that's using USB-C and an Android device that's using USB-C and an iPad with USB-C, because they use different um
Currency.
different currents and different all those parts are different.
So I got a question. So you call me out with that. So say you got Google Chrome and you cast your phone. That's not the same thing because you don't have the cable. I'm confused
Oh,
because you're imaging your phone without the cable. You
yeah, yep.
know how you know.
That's
So
different.
do you need the cable? To be HDMI if you could do the image like that.
You do if you don't want the latency that's added by
Uh,
depending on the network and the device that you're casting to and how old that is. Because there's even lag, even though we have decent fast internet here, and when it's the only device on, um, and I'm using like one of the new Chromecasts,
mhm,
there's still that delay. And then there's also things like the desktop modes don't work wirelessly. So like Android 10's built-in desktop mode, which needs a lot of work, by the way, doesn't work wirelessly. Samsung's DeX doesn't work wirelessly. Huawei has their desktop mode will actually work wirelessly if you have a device that supports it, but there's lag. So, and then the other thing is that requires some sort of network. Even if it's a direct connection, there requires some sort of that can slow things down. Where wired, if I'm somewhere where I have a decent LTE connection, I could use my Samsung phone with DeX or even without DeX just as a mirroring to a monitor or TV or whatever to be able to watch stuff without having to have, a router somewhere or use like a hotspot to connect through to like a Chromecast. You could just be directly wired. So there's that. And um like there's companies that are now making lower cost um, portable monitors where you can just use
Yeah,
one cable to run from your phone to the monitor and use DeX with like a keyboard and mouse. And yeah, you have to have something that powers it, but you just use a power pack, like a battery pack, and you're good to go. So, um, but just alone the fact that companies aren't required to implement the display out over that is hindering. Like on a computer, if you use um a motherboard for Intel that has a Thunderbolt port on it, the processor that's in that has to support, they only put that on motherboards where the processor either has internal graphics or you're going to use a graphics card that's going to support that sort of high quality and speed of both data, power, and video over it, where you can use a monitor and it will power it and provide data to it.
mhm.
So that's the same thing as the technology for USB-C, but not all USB-C ports have that Thunderbolt over USB-C. Some of them are just charging data.
Yeah, I understand now. But since we're talking about that, also that silence question that I have with Dex, because we're talking about smartphones and where they're going. So, what you think about Dex for be more phones implementing the idea of Dex for the future? What you
Uh,
think about that? Because, for example, if you're a student and you can afford a lot of money or a lot of stuff because you're a broke student, you could buy a monitor for $150, small monitor, like like an 8, 9, 10 inch, and then you could buy like a cheap keyboard, and you could have that for school. The only thing you got to be careful is of your phone life. How good it is, the life battery, the life cycle, how long it's gonna last. Because if you're a broke student, you're not gonna buy a phone every year. So I just want to
um,
how that
so
tied in with the smartphone um, question. Go ahead.
so as far as that goes, we're now into the third going on to into almost the fourth year now of Dex because you had the Note 8,
Correct.
Note 9, Note 10, and now we're going into the S20, Note 20, whatever they're going to call it this year
Not only that,
series.
more company picking that idea up. Go ahead.
So it's the fourth generation of it, which means in theory, you can go buy a device that's 2 or 3 years old that will support that for a lower cost now that will still be a really good device and don't have to. So I think that's part of the thing is when it first came out, you're talking about you have to shell out the price for the top end device because it was the Note 8. The S8s didn't support um right away. And I don't know that they ever support it on the S8 series?
I'm not sure.
I know the Note 9 and then eventually the S9 did. And the Note 9 was the first to support one cable.
Yeah, I think it was the nine. If I'm
And
not
then they added support for not having to use the dock to the S9 series and then the S10 and the Note 10 series natively from launch supported the single cable. Plus, they support the where you can use a USB-C to USB or USB-C to USB-C cable and plug it into your computer and um, support DeX on PC or DeX on Mac mode.
When you get a chance, Adam ask a question.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Okay, but go ahead.
So what I think is, as this generation comes out, which means you can go 2 years back once this comes out to the S9 series and Note 9, and those devices will be, and they already are, will probably only be a couple $100, and you'll be able to get, and you won't be on the first version of it. You'll be on, the second. And even if you can afford a little bit more than that and go with the 10 series, I've seen an S10 for like $400
Wow.
that you could support that. And we'll see it go down. So I think it's great. Plus, now that it's built into Android 10, as long as the company supports it, I think we'll see it get better, because then the app developers, since it's built in the native version of Android, are probably more enthusiastic and more pushed to make their apps support it, since it's not just a Samsung thing.
Mm-hmm.
My OnePlus has it. It's really bad right now, but we'll
Well,
see it improve. So his question, we kind of covered this a little bit, but do you guys think the next iPhones will have USB-C for charging? Um,
I'll say no.
I'm gonna
But go
say
ahead.
no. I'm gonna say we kind of covered on it a little bit before, but we're more likely to see that either they're gonna stick with Lightning and they'll include an adapter if that's the minimum requirement, because Europe now has said, oh, it's going to require a unified. But I think that will get fought, because how do you
Yeah,
decide what it is? Apple could say, fine, then they have to go and use Lightning because it's better or whatever, or there are more. We already have companies that support more interfaces with that. But I see more than likely what we'll see is they'll keep Lightning
an adapter.
with an adapter, or and wireless will improve. I think we're going to see faster wireless on the next iPhones, because here's why I think that. I actually did a little bit of an experiment, and I think that the wireless charging that was built into the iPhone 11 series was actually faster than what they put in the notes, like in the information detailed pages for those phones,
Okay.
because they said it's just normal, um, like normal speed wireless charging, but I actually think that it's faster than that, because I noticed that I because I used wireless charging on my iPhone 10 like all the time, and I use a Samsung fast charger, like the older style, the puck that sits down.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed when I used that with my 11 Pro Max, even though it has a larger battery, it was charging faster, wireless charging, than my iPhone 10 did. So I think that they actually allowed to use that faster, um, a faster version of charging. I don't think they allowed it to use up to like the 15 watt, but I think they allowed it
And
to
the one
use,
you're talking about,
yeah, yep. I think they allowed it to use was it 10 or 11 watt charging that supports. Um,
I'm not sure if that's
but
the
they just
one.
weren't public about it. It's like, um, the iPhone, if you have the iPhone 7, that actually supports fast wired charging with an iPad charger,
Hmm.
faster than using the 5 watt. They just didn't publicly include that in the details. So I think that that's what we'll see, is we're actually going to see faster wireless charging, and their wired charging will get faster, because they already added 18 watt with the previous generation, and I think they upped the wireless charging. They didn't say anything about it. So I think what
Yeah,
we're going to see with 2020 iPhones is we're going to see, um, I think we're gonna see at least 25-watt, if not faster than that, wired charging now. And we're gonna see at least I think we might see with the 2020 iPhones wireless charging that is as fast as the 2019 iPhones wired charging.
Yeah, some phones was not advertised because due to the small battery. So if you fast wireless charge it, you're gonna kill the phone of the longevity of life.
Well, and also the heat, the technology for the batteries, because the
Okay.
technology that's in the batteries for devices now is technology that's like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Hmm.
And so it's not even battery technology, I don't think, from the last year yet.
Hmm.
And now we'll see that come into play, and we'll see um like the fact that OnePlus was able, that so the charger that I have for my OnePlus 7T is still a 30-watt charger, but it's actually the technology in the phone why it's 23% faster than like the OnePlus 7 and OnePlus 7 Pro were, even though they use the same 30-watt charger. They call it the 30T. I think that's why is it's the technology inside the phone. So I think we might see the same thing with the iPhones that
Hmm.
they'll put out that they'll be able to say, hey, um, you know, we could have used a faster than 18 watt, but the internals just wouldn't support it. And to not kill the battery and have it last long since people keep their phones for like 3 to 5 years. So I think that's what we're going to see. And I already know for a
Hmm.
fact because I've done the research on it that within less than a year, well, actually, it was a year from when the article was done. So it's about within the next 6 months, one of the battery manufacturers said
Yeah.
at that point that graphene,
Hmm.
they'll be able
Graphene.
to, so they'll be able to provide graphene for major production by that point.
Hmm.
When the article was done, they said we can only do like 100,000 in a year, so we're not ready for any big companies. But they said, give us a year and we'll be able to provide
More.
more. Like we'll be able to provide probably 100 million in a year, which would be enough for iPhones and things like that.
I just wanted to go back to another question that Adam had. I would say no because if you do that, then it will not be unified, and Apple don't want to be fragmented with different ports.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Go ahead.
So what would happen is Lightning would be kept for obviously ones that are already out. The older iPhones and the 2019, but then every device that's new, they wouldn't continue to make it. Um, it's like when the iPad Pro switched over to USB-C, they didn't, although they did with that, like the regular iPad and the iPad Mini still used USB or USB to Lightning, but the iPad Pro, the 11 and 12.9-inch models both
Mhm.
went with, but that's different.
Yeah, that's a different case.
Because the pros were really designed to be more like a computer, and the reason they went with that was for interfacing and for data transfer speeds like to them and things like that. Where the
Yeah,
regular iPads were more designed for like schools and things like that, where they weren't
needed the
necessarily
touch.
like transferring
Mhm.
images. So, well, anyways, I think we're almost at
Yeah,
2 hours, and
that's probably good enough. I think.
my my I can
Well,
only talk for so much. So,
yeah. So it's any last question? We got. I'm gonna go for 5 minutes to make it. Round it off. If you don't mind.
oh yeah, I don't mind. I'm just letting people know that
Yeah.
that
And I
I'm
want to say
gonna.
thank you everybody for coming. We're not leaving yet. 5 more minutes, and put your final question. We appreciate it for being here, and let's continue.
I'm gonna
So,
scroll up real quick. So I want to
yeah,
say, if thank you to
yeah,
Monster because he'll probably watch the rest of us for coming on.
he's awesome.
Thanks to Miles for stopping by. Thank you for to check for High Tech Redneck was in here. Thank you to him. Thank you, Check the Tech, for your back and forth. Thanks, Adam. I know Adam. I worked with him, so
Oh, that's cool.
I I wasn't sure. I think I'm gonna. So I think I have a game plan because I already have some Tuesday night
Hmm.
content creator interviews scheduled. So I'm gonna keep those on that, and
Okay.
that like when I do special streams set to kept on Tuesdays, at least for the ones I already have scheduled, and then do Thursday for my normal stream from now on because it seems to be less occupied.
And it's good 2 hours.
So
Yeah. I don't know how Viper be going like 3, 4, 5 hours. I can't do Viper like that.
he does like 8 hours of he does 8 hour ones sometimes, but he streams like 3, 4, 5 nights a week sometimes, and he'll be on other people's streams. I could do it. I just I don't have the time, and the problem is there are a lot of topics, but it becomes redundant because everybody else has covered them. And if you do, and then also I like to wait till later in the week because sometimes there'll be something that's kind of broken in tech news earlier in the week, and then we get more information about it later in the week. That's like, oh, never mind, you know.
Hon- Honestly, if I would pick two people that I would like to mimic their work ethic, it would be Easy Computer Solution and Viper. They got their work ethic very strong.
Oh yeah, I mean, apart from ones that are pumping out videos, like they do a lot of streams and they do a lot of videos, but there are some of those guys that it's like, how do they do that? Well, it's because they have like some of those guys have teams.
Oh, that's different. But I'm talking about individual people without teams. They
Yeah,
would
it's that's the amazing thing is like those guys, they just do it on their own. They don't have like, Linus Tech Tips has 30 employees and um well, but even talking about that,
Mhm.
Justine, it's she has some help a little bit, but it's mainly just her too.
And
Like
she started getting the team. She said it.
she's pretty
Mhm.
much shoots a lot and edits a lot of her own things, which is amazing to me. But yeah, those guys, and then also
Yeah,
like
before we get, yeah,
like
before we,
uh shoot, Mr. Mobile.
mhm.
I mean, he's a big, but he does a lot of his own things too.
They
Uh,
had like one or two person working with him.
and then Podcastage, he puts out a lot of, and
But
it's just
Mr. Mobile used to live in Boston where I live, and I saw him 3 times, but I couldn't talk to him because he was taking the train. So he was on the train leaving, and I saw him pass by.
and there's a lot of people putting in a lot of hard work. Viper's guest from yesterday. Um,
She's 17. I've been following her since she had 100 subscribers.
yeah, she's so I found her not too long ago, but I think it's because so I didn't realize this until she was talking about it, but I think it's because when I first saw her way back, she was going by her regular name.
No, she never went by her name. She was always been her name. I mean,
Oh,
nothing but
has it?
yeah, because I've been following since 100
Hmm.
subscribers.
I thought she had a different. Hmm. Maybe I was thinking about somebody else then.
Yeah,
Anyways, but yeah, because that's been a problem with me too. Is like there's been channels that I've gotten unsubscribed from and didn't realize it,
hmm
and um, like Crystal Laura, um, but I've been trying to expand more and follow other creators in other areas too, and
You know
um,
what? You know what I'm doing? Whenever, and I'm not getting no daytime. Whenever I decide to come back, I'm gonna minimize on a lot of stuff that I'm doing to have better time management.
that makes sense.
And I think, oh, it's already 9. So I just want to say thanks for everybody being here. And if you want to follow me, my name is Tech for Your Needs. I'm going to pretty soon start my channel back again because it's dead. But thanks again for inviting me. And with that said, have a blessed night, everybody.
Thanks for coming on. I'll see you Let me know when you're gonna be if you're gonna be available next week at some point. Either day works for me or whenever
Okay.
you're gonna be
Mhm.
around. So have a good
No
night.
problem. Okay, take care. Thanks everybody for coming by.
Well, that concludes this week's episode um, of Tech Talk with Michael Pepper Tech Talk, and I will see y'all later. And don't forget to check out the links in the comments, as well as if you want to help support the channel, there's a link in there for that. And also, there's an Amazon link. So if you order stuff on Amazon and you use that, I get some kickback. It doesn't cost you anything more. I get a percentage or a set amount depending on what it is. Also, my other channel, Michael Pepper Photography, and my Twitter and all my links for my Facebooks and things like that are in there. And if you want to contact me, you want to be on a stream, it doesn't matter if you do tech, if you do photography, art, music, whatever you do. Um, if you want to join me on a stream or be on one of my episodes of creator interviews, contact me via Twitter, via DM on there, or over on Instagram. You can DM me on there at Michael Pepper Photography. And as always, thank you for joining me and God bless.